Welcome to the Divorce Remix Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Divorce Remix, the podcast, where I am on a journey to provide you with tools and resources and tips to empower you to create a life you love after divorce. So if you are just tuning in to Divorce Remix, it used to be called Move the Finish Line. And so season 1 and season 2 was Move the Finish Line. So if you're out there and you're going back through past episodes and you're like, wait, this isn't even the same name, it's okay. You are in the right place. God put it on my heart to change the name of the podcast because it really was for divorced people and helping you guys along your healing journey. And so it is officially Divorce Remix now. Welcome if it's your first time listening, and welcome back if you are a regular listener. So today I am very excited about my guest. She is just someone who is near and dear to my heart. I love her just so much. So I want to welcome Brenda Cunningham to the podcast.
Yay. Oh my gosh, April, I love you so much.
Yes, I just love her, y'all. So our topic today is going to be a good one. It's one that I don't think we talk about enough after something like a divorce. It's one of those things where you go through kind of this traumatic event and this may happen to you, but it's not really talked about. So today we're going to talk about navigating your career after divorce. And the reason why I have Brenda on here is because she is the CEO and founder of Push Career Management. So y'all, she is like the career guru out there. She will get your life together in your career. So listen.
All the way together.
All the way together. So listen, she is not new to the podcast. So she was on season 1, and the title of her session was called, or her segment was called, Better Scared Than Broke. And she shared with us her journey into entrepreneurship. And so if you missed that, go back, listen. She was very vulnerable with us about how she got into what she's doing, her passion for doing it. So if you guys want to get to know her a little bit more, go check out that episode. So Brenda, Push Career Management. How did you get into this field?
Oh my goodness. It's always so interesting when I get to tell the story, and I always kind of pick and choose with details to include or exclude, but certainly having been an engineer and a project manager, I knew that I was just not fulfilled by the work that I was doing. And I knew that there was something more. Like I always say I've been bit by the entrepreneurial bug. Like I knew that I was supposed to be an entrepreneur and I didn't know exactly what that would look like. And so I simply took a class, and it was about, how to write your business plan. And so I was writing a business plan for a business that didn't exist. I thought I was going to open a restaurant, and my dad was going to, do all the cooking, because I can't cook, y'all. And and I was doing all of this, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know anything about restaurant operations. I don't know anything about anything. And so I really just took time to sit with God and said, well, hey, what is it that I'm supposed to do? I know that I'm supposed to be in business, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I just sat with him. I did a 3-day fast, and at the end of which God told me very, very plainly, do what everybody's already been asking you to do. And I'm like, what? He's like, right. I'm like, right, what? Write their resumes. Oh my gosh, what, is that a thing? And so sure enough, it was a thing. I dug my heels really deeply into it, started to study, read books, join organizations, and just the rest is history. When we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a little bit, but I was actually laid off, and it served as the catalyst for doing this on a bigger scale, like really going higher, going deep. And so here we are, more than a decade later, doing the darn thing.
I love it. I love it. So I hope you guys were paying attention to kind of that transition she made from like, I got this great idea, to what is my purpose? And so that is something that I think if you know your purpose, it will certainly make it easier to navigate your career, navigate your business. But I love how you went from like, I've got this really fun idea, and God being like, no, that ain't it. That ain't it.
That's not the one.
And being willing to listen to God. Because I'm going to tell you guys, on this journey of divorce recovery, if you take the time, now you fasted for 3 days. So praise Jesus for that. But on this journey, guys, whether it is your finances, your health, your career, you take the time to spend with God, and He will clearly direct your path. He will tell you the next steps to take. Now, Mariah, I'll say I'm gonna mess up, y'all. I call her Mariah because she's my friend. Okay.
Love
So,
it.
Brenda. So, Brenda, you clearly hear from God, like, hey, you need to do what people have been asking you to do. Was it easy though to jump out there and do what God told you to do?
Easy was not in the vocabulary at that time. No part of it was easy. And I think one of the hardest things was on the financial front, right? You're leaving a career that pretty much brought in 6 figures a year to an unknown, and you don't have 6 figures that you're getting ready to jump into. You have to build that. And so it far from easy. Whatever the polar opposite of the word easy, difficult, challenging, insurmountable, those really were the better adjectives. And so easy was not the word. But then secondly, I really didn't have a whole lot of people believing in me yet. It was hard because I had to go to battle every day with those who were supposed to believe in me. And so, whew, like I gotta convince me, I gotta convince you, I gotta try to make something happen financially.
Yeah.
No part of it was easy.
Thank you for that transparency. We've both been in business about 10 years. And sometimes people may look at what we're doing now. They may look at our social media. They may look at and see us at different events and things like that and be like, man, that happened overnight. It was certainly not overnight by far. And I love how, you shared that you not only had to convince yourself, but you had to convince other people that like, this is the right thing to do. This is what God told me to do. And so I think that's going to play out perfectly in our conversation today. Now, one of the other things that we have in common is that we both have experienced divorce. And so one of the reasons why I wanted her on the podcast is not just for her professional expertise, but for her personal expertise. And so I think it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
The divorce was final a little over a year, about a year and a half ago.
About a year and a half ago. She experienced a divorce, and we're not going to get into details of her divorce, but she had to do what many of us have had to do after an event like that. We've had to determine what are our next steps when it comes to our career. And so we're going to be digging into that. And so, Brenda, share with us a little bit about going through your divorce. You're this business owner. You're now like this sole provider for your household. What are some of the things that were going through your head at that time?
Dude, honestly, on the days that I could breathe, just how am I going to do this? Really was one of the first thoughts was, is this even feasible? I went from being actually the bigger breadwinner to being the almost non-existent breadwinner to having to be the only breadwinner. And it was, in a word, scary. Scary, because it's like, wait, we struggled together. So certainly, how is this going to be easy for me by myself? And it wasn't going to be. And it proved every which way, in every corner of the earth, it proved to be, again, the opposite of easy. And so those were some of those first thoughts, just like, how the heck are we going to do this? And so instinct then kicked in, And it's just like, all right, we don't sit here and necessarily curl into a ball. Yes, there will be time for that. There will be plenty of time to curl into a ball, but this ain't that moment. And so in this moment, it's just, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to cut off? What is absolutely not necessary? What needs to be canceled or cut back? So cable, out the door. Like that was not even a difficult decision. So cable gone, any kind of extras just kind of gone. Do I need to renegotiate my, service packages? Is it time to revisit with the cell phone provider and say, hey, is there a different plan that I can be on? Changing things like insurance and all of those sorts of things. We had to get right down to some money saving activities like right away. And it was very, very scary. And I have 2 teenagers, right? So they're closer to adulthood now, but at that time they were, Jesus, I think they were 15 and 16. It was crazy. And it's like, oh my goodness, what what am I going to tell these children now? Like, sorry, you can't do X, Y, or Z. Sorry, you can't get that McDonald's that you are accustomed to getting. And so it was very, very hard. But somehow I'll be very transparent with you all throughout our conversation. My relationship with God had been a little bit shaken by all of this. But I knew God to be a provider. Like I knew that. I knew it. And so as scared as I was, as hard as everything seemed, like I knew that he wasn't going to let me down. He had never let me down before. He certainly wasn't going to pick this, the most tough time in my life, to start now. And so of course he's going to be there. Of course our needs are going to be met and things may look a little different, but so be it. And so this was kind of those first initial gut instincts and reactions to everything that had just happened.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize how devastating a divorce is. A divorce is a death. I say this all the time. Divorce is a death, but it is not a death sentence. Okay.
Jesus.
But it is a death. And so if I heard you correctly, the first thing that we need to do when this happens, we need to take stock of our finances, right? Before we can, does my job meet the bills? We have to take stock of our finances and of the bills that we have, of our budget. And so I was very much like you. I went through my last divorce in 2019, very sudden. So I went from on a Saturday, him saying he's leaving, to that next Friday, he was gone and everything was on me. And I had to do the same thing. My daughter was 10 and I was like, okay, cable is gone. Like, what we cutting out? What are we cutting out? Right. And that's just the first step. So for those of you listening, you may feel like, well, I don't even know if I can do it. Well, the only way to find out if you can do it or if you need to make changes is that you got to get back to your budget. You got to get to your expenses. And there may be a season where you're going to have to cut some stuff out. Okay.
A whole season of ramen noodles and hot dogs. Like, don't be afraid of it. I mean, it's going to be something that you get to talk about differently on the other side.
Come on now.
So don't be afraid of these like rocky, hard moments, but you're absolutely right in that it is critical. It is non-negotiable that you have to sit with reality, take some inventory. What are we working with? And then what do we need to do?
That is so good. So I want to talk about, we've taken inventory and maybe we find ourselves in this position of, my current job maybe isn't meeting my needs and I've got to either get out there, or we may be talking to someone who maybe they haven't really worked in a while. So I want to explore both of those in our next conversation about what do we do when I have to switch jobs. And so I find myself in this position and the job I have just isn't working. What do we do?
So, and I'm really going to give the same advice to both groups of people. This initial first step is going to be the same advice, regardless of which camp you find yourself in. And the advice is to take a minute. Like, you have to take a time out. Just saying this no longer meets my needs, I need to update my resume, or hey, I'm a solo parent now, I've got to update my resume. This is a very misleading first step that all too many people are taking. And they're doing it without the necessary information. And you said it earlier, like, right, defining what your purpose is, or even, I'll make it even simpler, I'll make it less church. Defining what your goal is. Yeah. Having a goal, right? Knowing what it is that you're getting ready to go out here and even endeavor to do. So many people just start updating their resume without a purpose, without a plan, without any kind of intention. They're simply listing everything they've ever done and hope, they're crossing their fingers, hope to God somebody will give me a chance. Can somebody just give me a job? Please, 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 can somebody just give me a job? And we are missing that again, all too critical, important, and absolutely non-negotiable first step, which is to first identify what it is that you even want to do. Because now you can tailor make a resume, or you can talk about yourself in the right kind of form and fashion, where I am now the solution to your problem. I meet your needs. I have the skills that you are looking for, as opposed to just here's everything. See if you can make sense of that. Call me if you find a match for. That's not how this job search system works. Not today. There may have been a time, once upon a time in history, where you could just show up with a resume and people will put you where they have a need. That is not the case today. Now you have stacks and stacks of resumes and people applying for a single position. And if you show up and all you're telling me is, hey, I can braid hair, I can count money, I can talk to people, I'm good at people. What does that even mean?
Yes.
You haven't told me how you are specifically going to help me solve my problems. And so even when we think about this, like an objective statement that we used to learn on a resume, yeah, right? Yeah. I'm looking for a position where I can utilize my excellent communication strengths and grow and develop within the company. Well, that's what somebody taught us that once upon a time, right? And we believed it, and it was true then. Mm-hmm. That was an effective approach. And now we understand that we're just a resume and a stack of resumes, and it's not about us.
Yeah.
It's about what we can do for this future employer. And so first step is absolutely critical, in that you have to define what it is that you even want to do. Even, my friends, even if there is more than one answer to that question. If you say, hey, I want to be a virtual assistant, but I also want to be a medical something, fine. But the one resume does not speak to both of those audiences. And so we need to be prepared to speak to however many different groups of audience we have with the corresponding number of resumes. And so don't be afraid of it, right? We just have to first identify what it is that we even want to do. And please let me step back just a little bit to say that when you're going through a divorce, it's probably one of the worst times to be trying to figure out what it is that you really want to do. If you're anything like me, I couldn't see anything. I had no sense of vision. I had no sense of future. Mm-hmm. Everything looked dark. Everything was just darkness and despair and mud and sludge. There was no light. There was no hope. And so it was very difficult to even be excited about a future that I couldn't see.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, it's so important that we do just kind of take a moment, take a time out, and recognize there is light. At least get to the place where you believe that there could be light.
That is so good.
I had people telling me, that there was going to be light, that it was going to be better, that I was going to be loved, that, you know, you going to find somebody that really, like, I had people telling me all these good things, but I wasn't yet in position to believe them.
That is good.
It felt like darkness, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to take those times out to just kind of feel what we feel, right? Let it work through the system, let it digest and come through the other end, right? Believe on some level, even if it's just a morsel of truth that you're just holding on to, that there could be light. Now you can begin this slow but sure process of seeing a future, of seeing a goal and establishing that thing. And now you might be in a position to update your resume.
I love it. I love it. I always tell people when I'm coaching them that are newly divorced is don't make sudden decisions too quick. There's a certain season, I think, that we have to get through, like you said, that season of darkness before you need to start making these big life-changing decisions. So I remember this last divorce. So for those of you guys who are new to the podcast, how I got into divorce recovery is after my third divorce. Yes, y'all, the third one. I went on a healing journey with God to kind of figure out what the heck is going on. And so at the end of that road became this divorce recovery and dating coach. And so I share a little bit about my stories on the podcast as well. And so I remember this last one in 2019. We'd gotten divorced in February. And then in March, I was like, I'm going to put my house in the market and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And my house never sold. And it was just, and I was like, God, why isn't the house selling? And it would have been a bad decision. So now 3 years, almost 4 years later, the value of my home actually helped me to get out of debt last year, y'all. And had I sold it then, I would have still been in the same financial position. And so to Brenda's point is that sometimes we just have to pause and breathe, even though the world is chaos around us, so that we can make those wise decisions. So when someone is in that space of, I need to maybe rethink my job or my career, what type of support team do they need to put in place to make sure we're not just jumping out here, doing what we need to do? And what did your support team look like, after your divorce?
So I would tell you my journey, of course, as an entrepreneur might look a little different from a job seeker's journey, and that's okay. Find whatever parallels you can grab a hold to, right, and use them to your benefit, use them to your advantage. My support team looked like people like April. Thank God I had somebody like an April, right, that actually understood some of the mechanics of divorce. And it wasn't just like theoretical, like, girl, just forget them, girl. It wasn't like that. Like, real life conversations, actual help and coaching, but understanding and learning not to depend fully on my friends like April, right? And so then to also look into, I actually participated in a it's called divorce care. It's a support recovery group kind of thing. And so you can learn that, a lot of times you don't have any idea what divorce. You see it on TV and you think you understand, but you don't understand. You don't get it until it knocks on your door. And so there's a whole lot of theory that you have to sift through. And so an organization like Divorce Care, which was, very Christ-centered, hosted at a church, and it was a very small, intimate group kind of community. But that wasn't enough for me. I went to therapy, y'all. I signed up with an organization called Life Guide, and Life Guides paired me with somebody who had kind of walked a mile in my shoes. And so she could help me really. I got to the point where I was meeting with her a couple of times a week. And it just, all of it helped me get out of my head and out of my own thoughts, and really enter into the space of finding solutions, of not just kind of existing and tolerating this darkness, but looking for that light. And so it helped in tremendous ways, things that I didn't even know to ask, things that I didn't know to think about, things like I have my journal here. but I created something for myself, and it's just called my bounce back checklist. And so, right. So folks, even like April would describe the emotions that I would eventually feel as a roller coaster. And so it's like, well, what do you do when you're in the pit? What do you do when that kind of sinking pit feeling comes back again? Well, I had to create for my little self I'm a list maker, y'all. I can't help it. And so I had to create for myself a checklist to bounce back out of despair, out of depression. And so things like, listening to worship music, that helped, but taking walks helped too. Dancing helped. I started to do a few yoga classes. Those things helped. And so trying to find those things that helped me are always good. But I'll tell you, from the job seeker perspective, a lot of folks will mean well. And so I want to caution you and I want to help you to brace for the folks that will mean well, that will, oh, you haven't found a job yet. Oh, don't worry, your job is coming. Like, thank you. That's not helping me. I need a job right now, right? And so, and by the way, I just talked about taking your time and pausing and all this stuff. And some of y'all are like, hold on, I got to eat. What is she talking about? I need to eat right now. And so listen, if you do have to take a job just to put some food on the table and keep a roof and keep some lights, please, my friends, you do what you need to do. Yeah. I will flip a hamburger before I'm standing on the corner with a sign begging for help, right? I will flip, I will serve, I will bag, I will do whatever it takes to survive. And there is nothing wrong with that. Nothing. And so, but now if you are in the job seeker kind of grouping and you've got, again, a bunch of folks who mean well, folks that are telling you need to update your resume, and they're offering to maybe even look at your resume. Oh, I love those the best. I'm like, do you even know what you're looking for? This is always a fun one. And they come in the form of like cousins and aunties and parents and siblings, and they come in those forms. People who mean well, they genuinely love you and want the best for you. And so they're trying to help, but they don't always necessarily know how to help. And so the best resources end up coming in the form of things like job clubs, right? There are job support groups, even organizations. If for those who are in the state of Arizona, and I know they've been doing some things virtually, but there's an organization called Career Connectors where you can go and hear about open opportunities and get some sort of an encouragement and practical keynote talk. And, I volunteer with them. I believe in their mission, all of that. There are workforce development facilities. We have here in Arizona, it's called Arizona at Work. And I know different states have different workforce kind of development programs. Plug in with those things are available to you. A lot of times folks can get access to training and certifications, access to immediately hiring kinds of jobs, resume support, interview coaching, help with LinkedIn, all of those pieces, but from qualified instructors and not just from people who mean well.
Man, that was a whole word, because I think one of the areas that we struggle at sometimes when we need help is assigning the right help to the right group of people, right? And so, we talk about things like going to therapy and stuff like that. And, I'll coach some people and they'll be like, well, I told my mama. Is your mama a therapist? No. Is your pastor a therapist? No. Now, it's good to have this support group, but make sure you are assigning the right help to the right support system, right? Yes. We talked about those resumes, and how many times have we seen, I'm detail oriented? What does that mean?
What does it mean, indeed? And especially, what does it mean when you have spelling mistakes in your own resume? Like, this is an issue. Yeah. And we're oftentimes not even thinking through what it is that we're trying to, when I'm teaching about like resumes and whatnot, I always use the term, make sure you have your eyes wide open when you're establishing your goals, right? And so that means that I'm not just out here updating my resume, right? That I'm thinking about, how much time do I have before I run out of money? Let's be practical. Right? Do I have time to pursue training and certification and development in this other area? Or do I need to do something right now in the short term in parallel to developing in this new area so that I can transition? So many times we just want to jump ship. I hate what I'm doing. I just want to do something new. And we don't have the time to develop in that area. And our job search ends up taking longer than it needed to be. Okay. And so do we have time? Do we have budget? Like, can I afford the training? Can I afford to attend the conferences? Can I afford the certifications? Pretty much, my friends, are not free.
No,
Did you know
not.
that, right? You typically, not only are you investing time and energy, but also dollar resources.
Yeah.
And so we have to make sure we have budget. We have to make sure we have genuine passion for this new kind of work. And we have to make sure that the work we're looking for exists where we live. I see a lot right now with folks that are just like, nope, it has to be remote. It has to be remote. It has to be remote. I don't drive. I don't do this. I'm not going to an office. And I'm like, all right, well, then I'm looking at them with the expectation that they have this amazing skill set. And the fact is they don't. They barely know how to use a computer and, don't have a whole lot of experience on the telephones. And it's just like, honestly, who do you think will hire you for a remote position without any of the requisite skill set that is necessary? Yeah. And so we got to be honest about certain things too.
That's a good one too. I want to circle back to something you said about doing whatever it takes. So, like I said, I've been divorced 3 times, and each time I've been in different financial positions after. And let me tell y'all something. I had no shame in my game. I have worked at a pizza factory. I did braids since I was 13. Let me tell y'all, I needed some money. We was opening shop to braid hair. And then Brenda might remember this one. So with my last divorce, I was in the place where I was, same thing. I was the primary breadwinner in my home. I was a full-time entrepreneur, but I did not make enough to maintain my standard of living once he was gone. Okay. So I worked part-time for a local bookkeeper. She was just like, hey, I need someone a couple hours. I did that. And then this is the one where Brenda might remember. So I am not the most crafty person, but I'm like, I'm about to be out here making it. Okay. And so when I got married the last time, me and one of my coworkers made this frame that we turned into a jewelry holder. Okay. So it's like, imagine like a picture frame, and it's got some chicken wire on it. And so they were really popular at that time. So let me tell y'all, I went to Goodwill and I bought some cheap frames. I went to Home Depot. I bought some chicken wire, some spray paint, and I sold those suckers all year long. Okay.
I am a witness because I still have mine.
Because she still has hers. And so it went, I didn't just go to people and say, oh my gosh, I need help. I need money. I was like, okay, Lord, give me witty ideas and inventions on how to do this. And I bought a staple gun. And that's how I helped pay some of my bills that year, was doing hair on the side and making those jewelry frames. And so get creative. If you are in that space where you're trying to make ends meet, okay, this is not the time to be, too prideful to get out there and do what you need to do. Like I said, I worked in a pizza factory before, and it was terrible. Okay, but I did what I needed to do. And so
I think that is excellent. Excellent. I'll tell you, there were parts of my work that, I will say, in the spirit of Marie Kondo, did not spark joy, right? And so there were days where it's just like, oh, I really don't want to do this. But I would always snap out of that by simply saying, but I have mouths to feed.
Yeah. And even if it's your own mouth, y'all.
Even if it's your own mouth, right? Because look, at some point, both my kids, did start working, and they both worked in food service. And so they would bring home their own, free meal at the end of every shift. So it's great for them. But now I still gotta eat, right? So they got their free stuff, but what about me? And so,
Right.
yeah, it's like I still have at least one mouth to feed. I still have a roof that we have to keep over our head. And some days, yeah, I know I didn't feel like doing it. And it wasn't about if I felt like it or not. It was about thinking about that bigger picture, like, hey, I've got these responsibilities and I've got to care for this. And so listen, I cannot sit here and tell you that I gave it 100% energy, that I was just, just gung-ho about it. I did it. I showed up. I did it. I pushed myself to do it, and I did it regardless of how I felt about doing it. I did it.
That's just it. Regardless how you feel, you got to get out there and do it. So speaking of doing the darn thing, I wanted to save this to about this point in our segment, but Brenda is also an author of a little book called Crush the Pink Slip: How to Get Back to Work in 60 Days. So when I say she's the expert in this, y'all, she is literally the expert. And so I want to talk about a few things in the book. Now, I know it says how to get back to work in 60 days, but it's not just a book for those of you who are not currently working. I believe that this is a great resource if you are trying to go to the next level, if you are maybe trying to make a career shift, go into a different area. But I want to talk about a few things that you mentioned in this book that I think are key. Because when we think about our careers, a lot of times we focus on like, well, what is my skill set or my experience or my degree in? But there's a few things that can also hold us back, I think, on the personal side from succeeding in our career growth or promotion, starting a new career, or just fulfilling the career, being in a career we love. And so one of the things you talk about is knowing your worth. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, and I'll tell you guys, right? This book is what, 6, 7 years old at this point, and it's still very applicable today, right? But a lot of times what happens is, and the word mindset comes right to the top of my head, right? When we think about knowing our worth, it's strongly tied to that word mindset. And I'm gonna start with the backstory, and then I'm gonna come back to answer the question. But I will say that I am not grateful that I am divorced. Yeah. I'm not happy about the fact that I am divorced, right? I wasn't happy. It wasn't a good moment. It wasn't even the decision that I made. And so it was a stressful bad time. But I am, in retrospect, grateful for it, right? And so because without it, I would have remained the stuck little, kind of content with less than what I should have had. I would have remained that version of myself. I would have. I'm absolutely confident that I would have. And so it was something of an awakening. It was absolutely, I woke up, and it took me back to feelings of when I was laid off. And at that point in time, my whole identity was wrapped up in my job. And so when your job is gone and your identity was tied to it, you feel like nothing. And then when your whole identity is wrapped up in being somebody's wife or being somebody's spouse, and then that's gone, you feel like nothing. And so you have to get to this place of understanding that you were something before you got married. You continue to be something even if your marriage ends. And so I think we tie our worth to sometimes the wrong, very temporary things of this world. And so we tend to tie our worth to our jobs, to our identities as parents and as spouses. And all of those things clearly are very temporary.
Yeah.
They're temporary. And so what would be a better mechanism to attach your worth? That's really boils down to that's the key question here. What would be the better mechanism? And so I say first and foremost, the best mechanism is God, right? It just is. He's the one that has yet to fail you, will never fail you. Like,
Come on.
he's the only perfect thing, the only unconditional thing. He's the only permanent thing in this whole equation called life.
Yeah.
It's just him, just him. And so we're so busy attaching who we are to some other thing, and we keep forgetting about him. Now, I told you I was going to come back
Mm-hmm.
to the truth, right? That I'd struggled with my relationship with God. And that doesn't make sense. Like you just said, he's the only one, right? You just said
Yeah.
that. I heard you say it out your mouth. Well, and it's true. And I still believe it. It didn't make it any less hard when there was actually a church element to my divorce. And so it was like, wait, what? I'm sorry, what now? But even I got church and God intertwined.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to hold God on his own pedestal, separate even from church.
Yes. So good.
Mm. And so all of these things, right? We have to know our worth, but we have to know our relationship with God. We have to know God, know that relationship with God, and know that that is the one thing that can't be broken.
Yeah.
That's just anything else in this world is subject to temporary being. It's subject to cancellation, right? Just never mind, I changed my mind. It's subject to all of those kind of temporary human emotions. But God, right, that is the only permanent foundation. That's the best thing that you can attach yourself to. And so, but then the other very practical extension of knowing your worth is where we come into these conversations, and I hear it all the time. Nobody will give me a chance because, and you fill in the blank, right? Nobody will give me a chance because I'm too old. Nobody give me a chance because I'm Black. Nobody give me a chance because I'm a woman. Nobody give me a chance because I've been out of the workforce for 15 years raising children, right? Whatever it was, you've convinced yourself that you are worthless to the marketplace. You have convinced yourself. And I reject it because I see it all the time. I see people who have been displaced from the workforce, either by choice or by force, whatever have you, but they have been displaced from the workforce for a decade or more. Generally speaking, they are mothers. Generally, every so often, they are stay-at-home fathers, right? And so I don't really care which group you connect with. The reality is some of y'all stay home raising your kids, and here we are now in a position where I have to get back into the workforce. What can I bring that is actually of value? And I say a lot of times we have to think back to who we are at our core. How did God design you? What purpose did he put you on this earth for, right? Raising kids is not an easy feat by any stretch of the imagination. And so if you have a genuine love for children, maybe that's a part of your future. Right. And now you can talk about all the experiences that you've had raising children, and you've probably been a part of the PTA and volunteered here and there. And don't forget, you've done things that make you very, very valuable in the workplace. And so many times people think just because they weren't paid for it, that it didn't count. They think, oh no, I just volunteered there. Volunteer experience is still experience. And I want us to make sure that we're grabbing a hold of that, because sometimes you have been working in this whole 15 years, you just weren't being compensated for it.
Oh,
and
that's
so
so good.
worry about being displaced for all of these years. Like, sometimes you just need a very objective eye, one that actually knows what to look for, right? And to say, hey, no, you've done this, you've done that, you've done this other thing. And you're like, yeah, but stop with the yeah buts. and start talking with somebody who can see you, even when you can't see yourself yet.
Oh, that is so good. So I'm going to hit on something you said about, our volunteer experience. So my volunteer experience got me one job and one promotion over my life. So the first one, and I've been volunteering at church since I was probably a little kid. But I remember I had recently gotten married the second time, and had lost my job working at a church. I had lost my job there, and I went to work for this call center, and we had to go through like the mandatory, onboarding and training and all that. And so we had gone through the first day of training, and it was no, the first week of training, and it was terrible. And so the CEO walks into our training class, and he's like, how many of you guys loved, the training this week? And everyone raised their hand but me. So everyone's looking at me like, he's a CEO, you're not. And I was like, this was terrible. So afterwards, he pulled me aside. He said, why didn't you raise your hand? I said, I'm gonna be honest with you. This was like some of the worst training I've ever seen in my life. And he said, well, look, do you have any experience in training? I said, the job that I was in before, which was a church, had a ministry school. I said, and I used to teach some of the classes there. And he said, okay. He said, I will give you 30 days to revamp this training course. And if you do it well, you can have the job. 30 days later, so this was back, now I got to preface this was back in like the early 2000s. So 30 days later, I had a PowerPoint and I had a big old binder where I had revamped our training class. And guess who became our new corporate trainer? It was me. I had no formal experience. Now, I had gone on after that to become an instructional designer by profession. But before that, that was all the training I had been teaching ministry school classes. And so because I had done that, I put that together. That is literally what started my career in instructional design. The second time was I was working at a local tech company, and I was working in their training department. So this job led to my, training job. I was working in their training department, and we did this really, really big event, this marketing event every year. I'm talking about, it had like a $3 million price tag. Okay. So it was huge, a company-wide event. And so the team that did that event like maybe 3 months before the event, completely just all three people just left. And so my supervisor was like, hey, didn't you used to do events? And I said, yeah, I was an event coordinator at my church. Here we go. Once again, not paid, but I had been doing events in my church for like 6 years, y'all. And she was like, okay, if you can take and make sense out of what they've done before, you can get moved over. I knocked that event out of the park, moved over, and are y'all ready for this? I got an $18,000 raise. Had not gone to school for it, simply because of where I had been volunteering. So when she says that there are skills that you have that you don't even know you have, trust her, y'all. Trust her. I mean, if you volunteer, if you help out at your kid's school, if you helped your spouse in their business, there are so many times that I see people who are newly divorced who say, I haven't worked, but yet I ran a company with my husband, or I ran a company with my wife. You've got skills that you don't know about. So, Brenda, the last thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to shine a little spotlight on you, is why would someone need someone like you? What is the benefit? Why should we work with someone like you when we're looking at navigating our career?
I mean, it's kind of been said throughout our conversation, right? And a lot of times it boils down to folks not seeing their own awesomeness, right? And so you have been so accustomed, you, the listener, right? You've been so accustomed to just kind of going through the day to day of your life, of your work, of whatever your existence looks like. And you did not see how truly amazing some of the things you were able to accomplish were. When I talk to folks a lot of times, and they say things like, yeah, I just, like, if you've ever said something like, it was just,
Yeah.
like, one of the things that we tend to not really understand is that something that you just put together, something that you just figured out, is something that would be next to impossible for the next person to do. And so often we need somebody who can help us see that. That is my call. That is my purpose, right? Is to help you see what's just kind of hidden beneath the surface of you. I don't, going slightly back to that knowing your worth conversation, like I can't, one of the things that I say to folks is, you should be doing work that you love, and you should be getting paid with what you're worth. And at the end of the day, don't be afraid to earn in congruence with the work that you're contributing to the world. But oftentimes we don't see it as valuable. We see, I just did that. And so if you go in kind of with this minimum wage mindset that that's all you're deserving of, I promise that's what most people will offer you. And you'll take it because you thought you had to. You'll start settling for the first thing that comes along, as opposed to really expecting that right, genuine, good fit that we see the parallel between what you're doing, what you're bringing, and the value that translates to. Okay. And so if you have a good understanding of what you're supposed to be paid, of some of the actual skills that you bring to the table and how special and unique they genuinely are, now you can start making some real difference and some real impact in your own career. No more of this, minimum wage thinking and minimum wage earning. We're not just talking about getting a job, we're talking about getting the job. And so when you are ready for the job, and sometimes you need a little kickstart of your own mindset, you need to reach out to somebody who's not just an encouraging force, but they're qualified, they've studied, they've trained, they know the mechanics. Yeah. This is not a game to me. And so, yeah, I pursue certifications in resume writing and job search coaching, and even interview and compensation negotiation. Because this is not a game, and far too few people know how to have these conversations. They don't know how to leverage their network. They don't even know what that means. What do I even have a network? I moved here from somewhere else. I don't have a network. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yeah. But oftentimes we need to be taught or reminded and refreshed on how to access that network. And so, yeah, again, you will be surrounded with a lot of people who mean well, but I want you to consider to start surrounding yourself with people who are actually qualified to be there.
Come on, y'all. Surround yourself with people who are qualified to be there. I love it. I love it. So, Brenda, if someone is watching this and they're like, look, I need to get a hold of her, talk to her, I need her in my life, how can they connect with you?
The best way to connect with me, and even to just get the what ifs out of your system, is to go to pushcareermanagement.com and schedule a free consultation. If you know you want more, you can get that strategy session, but that free consultation, it doesn't cost you anything. There's no obligation. I'm not some hardcore high pressure salesman, right? I don't do that, right? If I'm the right solution for you and we can find a good fit, great. And then if not, I'm going to refer you to somebody in my network, y'all, right? And so this is not a game, but that's a great place to begin the journey. If you feel more comfortable, you can simply watch from afar, right? Follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on the Facebook business page at Push Careers, but start with an action. Right? Do something today that your future self will be proud of. And sometimes getting your head out of that darkness, out of the clouds and out of the muck and into that light means I need somebody that's going to show me the way. Yeah. And so that consultation really can be a powerful tool for good.
Awesome. So I'm also going to drop that in the show notes, guys. So if you didn't miss it, you can go back. If you didn't get it, you can go back to the show notes and I'll put her website in there. But listen, y'all, this is exactly why this podcast exists. Because I'm gonna be transparent. About 6 months ago, I was like, Lord, I'm done with this podcast. I don't know what you want me to do with it. And what he told me was, we need more than just encouragement. When you are on your divorce recovery journey, encouragement is great, uplifting is great, prayer is great, but at the end of the day, we also need some action. And so that's what I'm doing this season, y'all, is I am putting experts on this podcast so that you guys can take action in your healing journey and get out there and create a life you love. So Brenda, thank you again for joining me. I love you with all my heart. It has been such a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. So another episode of Divorce Remix, the podcast. Make sure you guys get out there, listen to the other episodes, and create a life you love.